Good morning. This morning about 7 a.m., Monroe County Sheriff's Officers deputies were responding to a single vehicle accident on Route 490 westbound. It came in as a tour bus flipped and possible multiple injuries. Deputies arriving on scene found people that were trapped on the tour bus that had flipped on 490. Also found multiple people walking alongside 490 in a state of confusion that had been passengers on the bus. A coordinated response with the state police. Almost every EMT unit in Monroe County assisted. Multiple fire bureaus, including the Monroe County Fire Bureau, responded. And with our coordinated effort and protocols, we were able to extricate and transport 28 patients to local hospitals. We are now coordinating with families at the hospitals to make sure their families and loved ones know where they are and are accounted for and understand where they can meet up with them. We have our victims assistance units assisting with that right now. We also have a phone number we'll share with you that family members can call to reunite with their families. I have to emphasize the incredible response here. Protocols were put in place years ago for such an incident, a multi-patient incident, and that's what this was declared as soon as the first deputy arrived on scene, and the sergeant declared it a multi-patient incident. And with our EMT protocols and our fire protocols and our assistance with other law enforcement, it worked the way it was supposed to work. 28 patients were transported. All 28 patients that accounted for everybody that was on the bus was transported to the hospitals. And all 4 hospitals in the area received patients. That includes Strong Memorial Hospital, Unity, Rochester General, and Highland Hospital. And again, the coordinated efforts with our hospitals to be able to receive that number of patients in that amount of time is utterly incredible, and we appreciate their protocols and their practice and their training, and this played out. Unfortunately, we have one of the patients that is critical, and we'll share more information later when we find out the status of that patient, but our sympathy to the families, the people that are going through a lot of anxiety right now that don't know where their loved ones are. We're going to do our best to get them coordinated as quick as possible. Our accident and reconstruction team is now working the investigation to determine what happened. What we do know is just the bus was involved. It did roll on its side, turn 180 degrees in reverse, and was laid on its side when we arrived on scene. So getting people off the bus was a difficult task by everybody involved. I'm going to turn it over to the Chief Deputy for more specifics on the bus and the investigation and how that'll play out. I just got to say, protocols were put in place for a multi-patient incident. Those protocols played out this morning here on 490. Just an incredible response by all the first responders, and that's the way it should be, and our sympathy to the families that are going through a very terrible time right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Excuse me. So I just want to lay out our priority of effort here. Initially, the first responders arriving, the threat to life, rescues, being able to extricate those patients out of the bus, get them to EMTs and get them off to the hospitals was obviously the first priority. That was done very smoothly with little trouble for such a large incident. And then quickly the scene is transitioning into what we're at now, which is an investigative phase. This will be treated as a criminal investigation. That is not because we believe there's criminal act involved. That's because we are doing a complete and thorough investigation, so we're leaving no stone unturned, okay? That investigation involves several investigators. We have investigators that are interviewing occupants of the bus, investigators with the driver of the bus. We're going over preserving all the evidence at the scene, collecting video that may be involved. We're also using technology with the help of the state police, with our drone technology, our ground survey radars that help us reconstruct what actually took place here in this accident. So they'll take all the evidence that they find on the scene, the markings on the pavements, the debris field, all of that together. They'll do their work and they'll come back to us with a report on how this accident actually took place and what transpired here. I can tell you that our initial interactions with the driver are positive. The driver is cooperative. The driver's at this point, we find no criminality yet. However, as I said, we're going to do a thorough investigation, and that is a lengthy process. There is no initial indication of drugs or alcohol being involved, so we will continue to just work with the driver and try to reconstruct the events of this accident. At this point, we cannot give you a cause as to why. We still have a lot of work to do with that. It appears that based upon our interview that the driver left New York City with a busload of people at approximately midnight, was making stops along the way on the thruway, dropping people off, and their final destination was Niagara Falls. We have identified the owner and operator of the tour bus. It's a Tribal Sun Bus Company, and they're out of Massachusetts. So we're working with that company right now. They do have cameras on the bus. We'll be writing search warrants for all of that data, and we'll be processing that back at our office and trying to add that to our investigation and reconstruct what actually took place. But again, as the sheriff mentioned, now this has transitioned from a life-saving effort into an investigation. All these patients are at the hospital now. Several of them will be released very quickly with just minor injuries needing to be checked out, but we do have one that we're very concerned about, so we'll be checking for updates on that individual. We have established a family liaison office for any relatives, any loved ones that are concerned about members that may be on the bus. I'm going to give you that phone number now, and then I'm going to ask our PIO to push that out in a written product here shortly. That phone number is 585-753-4455. And again, that's our family liaison office. They will receive calls from the public, from loved ones concerned about members that may be on the bus. We will try our very best to update them with the latest information on that person's status, where they're located, and how we can reunite them to get those families back together. We'll do the same process with their property that was on the bus. There's an awful lot of personal property involved. We're going to secure that and go through this process with the family liaisons to make sure that that gets back to the right people. So those are our efforts right now, trying to minimize their inconvenience, minimize their concern for their loved ones, and get them reunited with their families. I'm going to turn this over now to our EMS chief here, who can possibly talk more about the status of the patients and that rescue effort.
Thank you, Chief. So Frank Manzo from CHS. We were the primary responding agency. It is our district, but however, it required obviously much more resources than we have. The declaration of an MPI, or a multi-patient incident, as these guys spoke about, gets 16 ambulances started to whatever scene and whoever requested it. We ended up using 18 ambulances, which for this area is incredible. It's an incredible response. I don't know where every ambulance came from at this point, because our colleagues at ECD, we say send ambulances and they find them. I believe it was as far as Penfield. And Genesee County definitely got tapped as well to help us out. So a great response from our colleagues, and we executed what we've practiced many times, is to get the patients that are critical off the scene first and then work on the rest. There was a great triage that happened to determine who needed to go first, who was very sick, who was still on the bus. And then, as the chief said, there were people walking around the scene that we kind of corralled them into one area to kind of assess them, triage them, and get them transported in a timely fashion, which we were able to do. We did use our medical communications officer to coordinate with the hospitals to find out who had capabilities to receive what. As we know, the hospitals are very overcrowded, so we rely on that communication to say, hey friends, what can you take at this time? And they were very cooperative. Strong being the trauma center for the region, obviously is going to get the sick patients, and then we can start to spread out some of the what we call walking wounded or minor injuries at that point, which we were successfully able to do to not overwhelm one hospital. It makes unification a little more tricky, but to get patients cared for, it's the best way we know how to handle it. Questions? Anybody else?
Tell us how many people were on the bus total, how many were, like a breakdown of how many were injured, and where most of them were people thrown from the bus, or they had gotten themselves out?
So I would say the majority were off the bus when we got there. There was at least one or two patients remaining on the bus per the sheriff. One was the critical patient who was taken out of the roof hatch, I believe, and transported very quickly. So there was a total of 28 patients, one critical, one of those was pediatric. The rest were adults.
Was the driver among those injured, and are you counting him in the 28?
Correct. The driver is part of the 28 number that were transported, yes.
28 were transported. Is that everybody who was on the bus?
Yep, everybody on the bus was transported. Some were certainly very minor injuries, just for evaluation and for safety's sake, and we had EMS capacity to do so. We put them all in ambulances and transported them.
Frank, you train for these type of things.
We do.
This is a real life situation. any problems, any access issues or traffic or that kind of time of day? It's going from dark to light.
Absolutely. So yeah, it does make some challenges. We absolutely practice on this. Obviously, it's very difficult for us to simulate real life. When we practice in a field or on a road, the road's usually closed, right? So now we definitely had some ambulances get caught up in the traffic, certainly in that westbound traffic where the bus was in the between exits, where we just kind of repurposed our resources at that point and said, hey, in order to get here, you got to come down the eastbound lane, cut across, and meet us over on the north side of the road, which we did. So we ended up utilizing all the ambulances that came in from the east heading west. Once we were able to navigate some of that traffic, the police agencies did an awesome job of clearing vehicles out of the way that were uninvolved. So even when I got here, which was probably 10 minutes into it, 20 minutes into it, there were already vehicles starting to be removed off the roadway, being turned around, which just makes our jobs that much easier.
What's the manpower number here, estimate ballpark?
Of total fire and EMS?
Yeah.
We're working on that.
Yeah, working on that, right?
It's got to be. I don't even.
Hell of a lot,
Honestly, I don't even know
probably.
who was
Yeah.
here. It was in the hundreds.
Hundreds.
Absolutely.
And you had a youngster on board?
There was one pediatric, I believe, who was very minorly injured.
Minor. Okay. Any other children?
No, not that I'm aware of. We called it 27 adults, one pediatric, which would be 18 or less.
Okay.
Sheriff or Chief Deputy, when your deputies first arrived on the scene, did they describe to you what it was like? I mean, was it chaotic? Was everyone sort of subdued? What was the scene like?
I think it's surreal is probably the way they're going to describe or we're describing it, and the fact that there were people out walking along 490, and of course you got a bus turned over on the side, you got people possibly trapped, we don't know who's on the bus yet. It was that surreal moment. You train for these things, but when you pull up and actually see a bus flipped on its side and people literally walking in a state of confusion on the side of the road trying to figure out what just happened to them as they were just thrown about inside a bus, right? So it was surreal. It was things you train for, but you don't ever expect to see in your life.
And then one thing I'll add to the sheriff too, and we work together on this. One of the big parts for us is patient count and how many people are on the bus, and do we know if there's not 3 in the woods, 1 under the bus? So these guys work very closely with the driver. We got a manifest very quickly, so we were able. So we have a process where we count our patients as they leave the scene, and we try to tie up our numbers in the end. They didn't match exactly, but we called all the hospitals, and we are dead set on the numbers. So we are very confident at this point that there's no one in the woods, no one under the bus that we're missing.
Where's the person from that is in the critical state? As far as her
Don't have that
condition?
information.
Yeah.
We also have not been able to contact their family yet, so we're not gonna get too specific on that.
Had the bus just made a pickup here in Rochester?
The drop off, yes.
Drop off. Okay.
I know you said this is a criminal investigation.
Please don't let that mislead you. We don't believe there's criminality involved, but that's the type of investigation we do when we are absolutely not going to leave any stone unturned. It's just a term we use, okay? We do not have any indication of criminality at this time, but we are going to look at it as thoroughly as possible. We've got our partners helping us with bringing in some of their technology. New York State DOT is here. The Office of Emergency Management was out here. It is going to be a long incident here. We anticipate it'll be well into the afternoon before this portion of the roadway is opened up. And then the investigation still will not be over. We're going to take the bus back to a secure impound where that will continue with the investigation. It'll go through a complete and thorough mechanical inspection to make sure that it's up to standard and all of the safety requirements, everything, to make sure that the driver was performing all of their tasks as needed according to New York State DOT regulations. So this will be a lengthy investigation. I use the word criminal only to give you the level of effort that's going into this.
Just back up just a second. The bus was clipped. I'm so sorry. It was clipped. What was said?
No, it looks like right now the preliminary investigation shows that the bus was the only vehicle involved in this accident.
Gotcha. I'm so sorry.
There was other vehicles around, but looks like no one else is involved.
Gotcha.
So to let people know, it looks like the eastbound lanes are
Eastbound,
open.
yep, we just opened the eastbound lane. The troopers opened that. So eastbound is now open, but westbound, west of Union Street, in between Union Street and Churchville, will be closed for a significant portion of the day.
Final destination of this bus was Niagara Falls, so
That's
it was
correct.
picking up in New York and dropping off. So it was more full than this before it got here.
Yeah, that's our understanding, yes. We'll be adding to this, you know, as we finish interviewing all of the passengers and collecting all of that information, we'll have a much more thorough explanation of the trail of events here.
The driver was operating to inside his normal shift hours, whatever. He said he left.
So all of that is part of our investigation. We'll take all of that into account. There are several pieces of electronic technology that are involved in that now for those commercial drivers. So we're writing search warrants for all of that. We'll be taking that, we'll be downloading it. Our investigators will be working with the troopers and their commercial vehicle unit, our commercial vehicle unit. We'll all partner together and be able to paint that whole picture as to what took place.